had that bar, that cup sliding all across the table, whatever caused that. You see what I mean? So there are some that they get dominant with the field, and then they try to demand the field to do something, and then they try to work a system of magic in that level, versus one who has trained their field, versus another one who is entreating spirits with the different things that spirits are entreated by to do different things. You see what I mean? So the energy is a bit different on each of those.
It's the same thing that the people do in in Hollywood. This is what they call it, selling your soul, but you can't sell your soul. You can only sell what your soul produce. And normally your soul production is some type of artistic expression. So whoever captures your artistic expression in the realm of magic has captured your soul. And that's why they always after the masters of the artists. They always want the original film because that's where the source of the power is.
Yeah, and the two-dimensional imprint of the signature on the contract. You see what I mean? And this is why, that's why we're also saying that still, you know, even with the Christian thing and the religious thing, this stuff is very dangerous. Why it can seem like a game, we still have thousands, if not millions of souls that are just, you know, they say you're going by the wayside because of not realizing the potency of this particular magic, if you may. And that comes from not even believing magic exists.
Yeah, because they turned it into fairy tales that only children believe in. So therefore, the adults are going to be too stubborn to indulge in childish fantasies of magic and mysticism. So they teach it to the children as if it's a joke, when it's the highest form of liberating art you can teach them. But by making a mockery out of it, they don't look at it as being potentially real. So they suspend their imagination through the 12-step thinking detox called education.
So real quick. So we're talking, and this is too good. This is too good, y'all. I knew it was gonna be good, but this is awesome. So speaking of fairy tale, and we hear about, we're talking about, I mentioned earlier about ancient civilizations like Atlantis and telepathic civilizations. When we hear stories about us being half horse, half human, this shit was for real? Like, talk to me about, like,
that was called the mythic period of Earth.
Yes.
Talk to me. Explain this shit, Rod.
Okay, during the mythic period, you came in what's called your metaphysical form or your mythic form. Right. Many of them came in as fairies, gnomes, but now we in what's called the human phase of the development. So nobody's allowed to come in a mythic form, but you can still see the fairy in the face of the young human that's a fairy in the mythic realm. Right? So this is a genetic expression where you see the dude built like a horse, strong as a mug. He's modeling the energy of that centaur you talking about, right? Or he look like he kind of remind you of a bull, nose spread wide. He's looking like a minotaur, right? But the energy, we had to all come in human form. So Tahuti can't come in as a Benu bird. He got to come in as a man. And Osiris and Ra and Set and all of them got to come in human form. Right? And during this period, everybody got to have amnesia when you come in as a human so you can know what it's like and what you're doing to the humans when you're ruling over them. So you let the humans rule over the gods. And while they purging they corrupt humanity through catharsis, right? The gods endure the suffering in order to liberate the souls of the new ones. And there we go. You got the flow, Seven.
I have some extensive works on what I also call another missing link, which is the connection between humans and animals, and even what you see in modern shamanism. I would definitely suggest the final book by Michael Harner, where he spills the beans on just all of the indigenous cultures that he's been able to make notations on and their practices of going first through the middle world, which they showed was, in trees, waterfalls, lakes, in special areas, hold access, and even just drum beats at a certain BPM will put a shaman or a journeyer in enough trance to enter into those portals. And then generally, once they get into those portals, if they have a quote unquote spirit animal, which I feel like is almost like when you always see the guys riding on something like griffins and all this, that we had a animal, if you may, that we rode on that made more of like the totem animals inside of our tribes. And to a certain degree, that like those cultures who still have access to their totem animals, they be all on the astral plane doing all types of stuff, continuing to, there's just a whole world for that. The mommies, the taitas, and all of that aspect of shamanism. But gleaming the knowledge that you see from these ancient medicines and what they're saying, they explain also heavily about how we have this totem side. And when you open up the third eye and you look at a person, you see, sometimes you don't even want to look at him, even as the homie, because it's like, wow, I didn't, you see what's under all of that. And I feel like that the reason why we have this sheath over us right now, the cloak, if you may, that makes us all look similar enough, was a part of the covenant to basically keep what would seem like natural predators, like meaning that some animals are naturally going to go into conflict, into more of a state of where they would even mix. Because even when we see like, there's huge contrast, like you were saying earlier, even between a lion and a tiger. I think that was one of your shows. Like lion and a tiger is, still different, but you can mate them together. But you go one more rung up, and that's why all this is about genetics, right? When you go one more rung up, everybody's in the same body. Now you can go and have a Chinese black baby. You can go and have when meanwhile, before that was really a certain type of snake. And then over here, you got maybe another kind of entity, and then they weren't necessarily mixing. You see what I mean? So I just think, the jury could be still out on it, but it's not something to make finite, but it's still something to remember that the animals play a huge role in the building blocks. And a lot of this comes from the ocean. That's why I was showing, those, actually it all comes from the ocean first. Like they show the fish with the lips, the teeth. You go to George Haeckel's radiolaria, you're seeing even the helmets of the Mongols, you're seeing the breastplates, you're seeing the cross, you're seeing the Virgin Mary. I'll throw some pictures up here in a moment, but even in the radiolaria from the ocean, it's almost like these shells contain what later on became the pancreas, what later on became the heart, what later on became the, in a way where all these forms, like when we talk about creating, a creator, like we see in the ancient texts, can put all of these different things together. You see what I mean? Like all of the stuff that we're made out of from different pieces and then meld it all together, and then it become like an organism. Then we start reproducing. You see what I mean? That's a creator. Or that could, some say, hey, now that happens genetically. It happens over a period of time. But what I like to look at is just the spiritual side. And you clearly see, like you will see a cat that looks, you can see the animalistic traits. But then also when a spirit jumps into somebody, like there's certain spirits that are more numerous, they make people do certain things, but you can always even see those kind of people, you know what I mean? When you learn how to even distinguish between the spirits. So I think we have a lot going on behind the scenes with the animal powers and forces that go ignored.
You mentioned the totem system. The totem system worked like this. If my totem animal is a gorilla, right? Whatever the gorilla has as his primary identifying strength, then if I focus in to the gorilla, I can harness that strength. If I need spiritual farsight, I tune in to the eagle, right? The eagle is known for his sight and his ability to fly at high altitudes. So now I use the totem of the eagle to look down on the situation from what they call the bird's eye view, right? I use the mole because I need to know what's going on in the tunnels. So the spirit of the mole will guide me through the tunnels if I tune in to the frequency of the mole, right? So the totem system you are harnessing the frequency of the animal in order to use your psychic ability. You can tie your remote viewing to these animals. And when you do that, you can actually send a bird to go look at something you want to see, and the image will play in your mind like you looking at it. Right? This is the totem system.
Yes.
And how it works.
Yes. This is exactly even what the power animal is. That's why they say, hey, you got to, because even when you approach these beings, it's almost like they're, it's like a real relationship. So you can't just jump into the eyes of the eagle unless you have a relationship with that spirit. And they go on journeys and they have places. And that's why, again, the ancestors are so important and being able to tap into that plane, because they'll tell you, yo, it's over here and here. You got to go there. Again, Michael Harner's book, he's got a story right in there. He went to a cave that the natives told him to go to. They told him, you don't got to take no substances. You don't got to do nothing. Just bring some food, this food. And then when you eat it, once you're done, leave a little bit out. He was in the cave. It was all pitch black. Got late at night. Then it got about 2 a.m. He was thinking nothing was going to happen. Then a spirit came through so strong. He felt the strength in his body. And then he said, I am bison. And then rolled through. You see what I mean? So these are spirit animals. Now, somebody who can't handle that energy, because there's stories about that too. They told him, hey, if you don't leave the cave, whatever you do, anybody who's left the cave before the morning time, it didn't go well for them. So there's always, these are real things, in contrast to what we see going on in reality with the play, these are real things. So you approach the ancestor bison. I was even seeing today, this all rings in. They had this billionaire. He's like 6th richest man in the world from India. He's got this zoo. And he's taken all of these animals, especially the elephants, the lions, the tigers that were slaved and stuff like that. And he's created like the most advanced. I mean, the humans don't have anything this advanced. They even use an AI. They got the spa they got the the infrared treatment for arthritis, all that, right? And they show even how the elephants went and took the chains that they were in and threw the change. Like, you don't have to change around us. You see what I mean? So it's just realizing, hey, not only are these animals sentient, but people are also developing relationships with these beings, offsetting karma. All of Africa is full of using these entities to do a variety of things. Sometimes, and most of the time, shenanigans. That's in the degrees of the spirit. But when we're talking about, again, these pure totem animal aspect of things, they say one of the main benefits, because there could be many, but their ability to travel through the different worlds and the different planes. Like they try to make maps for how to get into certain spaces, but they always note that the power animals seem to not have the restriction in getting into certain spaces. So they often ride them. So I just, I wanted to add that in there, because we definitely have a lot with our ancestors. I'm gonna throw up some images here, just of that lion energy, because this is a lot of, but again, when we go into it deep, we often see, and this is why it becomes like, you see the rebellion, as I said before, but you also see many of the great fathers. You see that lion-like nature, right? And then you also still witness other cultures. And I got like a whole book on this that just shows in facial features how animalistic features are built within faces, and you could see it more a long time ago. You can also see clearly that a lot of the, certain races were really mating with certain livestock or had seemed to become offspring of a certain livestock. But then again, like I said, it all goes right under the carpet, because it's like, oh, okay, well, no, the animals they're lower than us. That's the main thing that'll come out. But if they're lower than us, that still makes them part of the foundation that we grew from. You see what I mean? But then again, when we're also looking at the animals, because we're looking at it also something else in a physical body, it still may be closer than some of the chimeras, but we're also looking like in these images where you see Buddy is clearly, he's tapping into something totally different, right? So we have spirits and entities moving around, and then one has to still, this is a culture. So what we also find is a lot of times a person will come from one culture and then try to practice the rites and the rituals of another culture. And this was also talked about in this book. and how sometimes the cultural ancestors of that person won't accept those people coming into their domains, just as animals may be territorial. There may have been a conflict in the past with that person's race. So, I always find that the exploration of the other world in the Middle Earth, if you may, always renders some really, really fat gems inside the reality to connect the dots. You know what I mean?
No, indeed. Yeah. Wow. Shit, y'all. Seven just keeps coming with these receipts and these images, man.
I keep
Dude, Seven, man. Images.
Man. I would just like to DJ Rod, you know what I mean? As far as like, when he done, because I got images for days, right? I got AI.
Man.
It's like real time receipts, you know what I mean? Because that, this is also, just to speak to, even you had mentioned AI earlier and all this kind of stuff, even beyond that, like real time education. Because what I'm realizing, you can't convince a fool of anything. So you'd be a fool to even try. So sometimes we're really arguing or trying to prove a point to people who didn't even have a good upbringing, right? Didn't even have mom there or a dad there or a school of hard knocks or, a prison old head or somebody there to help them go through the process. And now here they are, and they're at that level of awareness. And it's like, so now you have to take the role of like the teacher, but from the basic school, like, here, we're going to start off with pictures. Let me show you how really underneath all of this or beyond this face, there's characters. We got animals, we got traits, and we got paths. We got some basic ones like the tarot, the 22 path, because that was the last one that came out, right? But then once you kind of fold back into that, now you have your original ancestral, like ancient one kind of path to walk, which takes some maturity, it takes some adepthood. Now you're entering into, the sanctum, if you may. But it's still all set up to, if a person is going through that process and then they have, like, you just having that willingness to learn, right, and not be like, I'm not believing any of that. Because here's one thing that I wanted to mention before we even taper off on the show. One, even about the Jesus thing. Let's say, for instance, that I'm growing up back in the God time, and I'm really doing what this tells me to do, this scripture about God. Some guy then comes and says, hey, follow me now. I'm going to be your way to God. What kind of sense would it ever make? Like, do you really believe somebody devout would follow somebody else? That's everything that they're being told not to do. You see what I mean? So a lot of times we have to be able to be the fly on the wall in certain situations and be like, something ain't adding up here. It can't be like that because of this. And so that's my approach also when I'm dealing with this ancient knowledge is I've been able to like drive around the whole territory of occultism and also even avoid many of the pitfalls, but still learn what exactly is going on in there by simply having an awareness and a mindfulness and a heart that wants to actually give to others and see them increase. But if you look all day at an image of somebody suffering, psychologically, you can't imagine that one day you wouldn't want to see somebody else suffer, okay? And let's just talk about from a psychological level, like this man is suffering on this cross, and this is the image. Not to mention how much damage it could do for a child to think that the father who loves it so much would actually sacrifice it for anything. So these kind of concepts in themselves break the very fabric of the foundation to how, we really look to one another. Like when they say, hey, love each other and love one another and all that kind of stuff. Like this scripture says he hates Esau, but Esau is his own son. So when the world is mixed with these confusions, because that's what we're seeing right now, we're seeing the confusion of the true language of what goes on inside of us. And then now we have this grand renaissance, even going into 2025, we have this big time where all the information and everything is being revealed. That's obviously got to be for something. And, and that's why, I'm giving thanks again for being here, being able to still transmit this message is like, 17, 16 years now. And just being in the space, but also still learning. Like I saw somebody put in there Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? Or Obi-Wan, just to show you how the OB is still there. And if you understand that, so all of those, but even that, it's like there's never an end to this awareness and learning. It just becomes another piece to a puzzle that allows you to see a much more bigger picture. So, yeah, I just wanted to
I like to say, Seven, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you.
You know,
I can show it to you, but I can't help you realize what it means.
Yes.
Right? I understand that smart people sound totally insane to dumb people. And if you're trying to tell a dummy what to do, he ain't gonna never understand it because he's not gonna understand structure, discipline. That's what makes him a dummy. Right? Willful neglect of the responsibility of self-development. They refuse to do anything that's gonna make them better people. When the only way out of here is to improve what you was to become what you need to be.
Exactly.
Right? So that means that the real person on the cross is you. You trying to crucify your ego self to free you from the crucifixion, to liberate you into the reality of your choosing in order for you to develop your best life from your worst case scenario that you emerge from.
Exactly.
And the reason it was you, because you were strong enough to take it, period. Because if you ain't strong enough to take it, it wouldn't be your responsibility. When you go to the old proverbs of the ancestors, they say that the strongest one must carry the heaviest load. Why they tell us that? Why is that a part of the historical record of the oral tradition? They also say the one who know the way must lead the path. That's not optional. They say he must lead the path. Right. So the person that find their way out from the mental bondage is responsible to try to free as many other his brethren as possible. Each one teach one, we all gonna reach some. Right? So when we start dealing with the cognitive dissonance, the rebellion comes in the form of player hater. Look, and my philosophy is this: it feels better to congratulate than it do to player hate. At least to me, it do.
It does, definitely.
I'd rather have Seth Bowman on here and have this conversation and give him his flowers in front of everybody than to be on my channel talking about that nigga ain't. that don't feel good to me.
Yes.
This what we doing feel good to me.
Yeah.